Hello, my name is Heidi Howard, and I'm a marketing manager for SMX. I will moderate today's conversation about Accelerate Your FedRAMP Journey. Joining me today is Spencer Colson, Head of Growth SMX Products. All attendees are currently placed in listen-only mode and will remain that way throughout the session. There is a chat feature on the Zoom console on your screen. If at any time during the session you have a question, please use the raise your hand feature and I will get that question to Spencer at the appropriate time so he can respond. If your question is not addressed live or you have a question after the event, just follow up with me or Spencer and we'll get that question answered. And with that, I will hand it off to Spencer.
Thanks, Heidi. So, as Heidi said, we're excited to talk about what it means to accelerate your ATO and how we can use that together to grow your government business. So, a little bit about SMX. Really, our motto is that we're here to solve, and really solving is all about enabling our clients' missions. And what does that mean together? So together, our goal is to bring the technology that we have, the capabilities and services that we partner together to be able to solve hard missions in the most highly regulated environments. In order to be able to enable that, we focus on making sure that we have the right level of compliance controls, whether that be FedRAMP for our solutions, CMMI or CMMC for our processes and technology, and ISO for our services, to be able to bring confidence to customers that they can rely on the services that we are delivering to meet their outcomes. So I don't know about you, but history was not my number one subject. I struggled a bit, but one thing my teachers did get through to me was that history matters, and it's a good indicator of what it means to grow together. So a little bit about our history, about how we came to this point of being able to offer acceleration and how we can do that together with confidence. About 30 years ago, SMX had the opportunity to work with the Marine Corps to create their first consolidated SOC and NOC service. Collectively, we cooperated that for about 22 years, where we learned a lot about what it meant to operate secure environments and the reason behind controls, not just checking the box. From that, we decided to invest in raising that impact, raising those services to other organizations. First with the federal government, where in 2009, we had the opportunity to deploy and launch the first federal cloud on AWS, and to be able to kick off cloud for the government together with them in the Department of Treasury. For that, again, similar model, we had to create a fully managed capability for the Department of Treasury in an environment where there wasn't FedRAMP yet, where there wasn't fully defined controls, and where we needed to help the government feel secure and know they were secure, despite not us not being able to hand them pieces of shredded hard drives like the controls required. Creating those compensating controls to support the reason behind the compliance was critical for our ability to be able to help them through those early days of cloud. Moving forward, we found that adjacent commercial entities, banks, financial services, healthcare, medical device manufacturers, regulated manufacturing, and those ilk needed that same level of confidence that while their services may be commercial, the concern still existed that they are regulating partners, the government agencies they may have engaged with or supported, would also be aligned with the way that they provided controls to their cloud platforms and services. So we found a great deal of success helping those government adjacent, high compliant agency organizations get through and maintain compliance for their businesses as a managed and professional services relationship. Starting in about 2015, we postulated that there was a new sector that we could also support with accelerating these mission outcomes. And that was the solution providers that are providing capabilities to the government, but were limited in their ability to be able to scale because of the way the government was buying. We'll talk through one example of that, a great partner of ours, Appian, who went on that early journey with us, where we aligned our services and their capabilities to provide high compliance capabilities as a SaaS solution to the government, early days of those service offerings of FedRAMP. as we achieved our FedRAMP and enabled higher level compliance for those first customers, we found that the demand was something that the government and our ISV partners were getting benefit from. And so just a few years ago, we made the investment of turning that program into a fully managed service, where in 2023, we launched our ATO as a service capability that we're going to be talking about today. So what's the premise of today's discussion? Why did we bother taking time out of our schedule to get together? So fundamentally, we believe that there's an ability to be able to positively impact the government's mission by us delivering higher impact innovation into the government. As ISVs, that means likely you've had a very effective commercial sector business. You've been able to bring value and innovation into your commercial sector customers. Maybe you've done that offering, likely a SaaS capability that the government would consume as a service. But first, we want to make sure that there is a path to making the ROI impactful to your business to be able to determine whether this is the right sector for us to invest in. So as we go on this journey together, I like to think about this as a road trip. I enjoy road trips. I enjoy getting out on the road. And I think the journey to FedRAMP feels a lot like that government road journey. But first, we want to make sure that this target market, target value proposition aligns with what we do, right? Let's first take a couple of checkpoints here to make sure that that's aligned. So when I think about that, I try to make sure that the market is real, growth potential is there, and that it offsets potential risks to my business. Here in the government sector, the way those numbers play out, it's about $100 billion TAM for ISV solutions in the federal and defense sectors. Best numbers is that of that TAM, there's been about 10% adoption with a 25% year-over-year growth rate. So meaty and rich with plenty of potential. They tend to be high and stable customers. We'll talk about our experience there. And oftentimes they'll be willing to pay more per license once you get to your ATO. And realistically, the market is still pretty nascent in the FedRAMP and DoD authorized services. So with your solution in market and authorized, you have a significant first mover advantage. Out of these numbers, probably the one that I'm the most interested in is this percent adoption against such a large TAM. Realistically, that highlights that there's a break there. There's a broken process, a broken capability, something that isn't working. Otherwise, that TAM would see much more significant adoption. I hope that when we get through what we talk about today, we'll see ways to close that gap with your services and your technology. Okay, so furthering that story of this road trip, this journey, this path to the government by going through and following the right path. I don't know how it's been for you. I don't really carry maps anymore, rely on Google Maps or other voice services to make sure that I stay on the right trail, sometimes to my detriment. And I think sometimes we find the same thing along that path to FedRAMP. I can think of one time that I was driving through LA and realized that my Google Voice Maps the volume had been turned off. And so I was already 3 exits down the road with a long path to get back. Sometimes we see that as false starts in that journey to ATO, where organizations start towards FedRAMP and end up pulling back or have an experience that prevents them from finishing the path. And I made to AWS last year came back that about half of the partners who reach out to AWS for support for authorization end up not getting to an ATO. And while there's a lot of reasons behind that, whether it be unrealistic expectations, the cost was too high, the time was too long, the distraction was too big, maybe inappropriate partnership alignments were made. The reality is that getting to FedRAMP takes a very strategic path that isn't always just about getting to ATO. So let's break that down. The way that we've seen success through our partners and the ecosystems and those that we work with is that it requires 3 functional areas for success. First one is what we often talk about, which is getting to ATO. getting through that compliance path, making sure you come out the backside with an authorization to be able to deliver your SaaS product. Realistically, that's the beginning of this journey and far from the completion of the point where we're making the impact we want to make as providers. Second area is staying compliant. Staying compliant is a little bit of a different change to lifestyle over the way you may do business in the commercial space. We've seen that impact even for our high security customers who are used to doing security and compliance in the commercial space. The government has high expectations and rigor to their plans for how you need to engage. Getting that right is key to your ability to maximize market growth. The third one is selling and growing in the government market space. For those of you who have done that already, that experience is significantly different from how you would sell and grow in the commercial space. Getting a plan for that, organizing yourself for success, even from day one, will impact how you make this journey so that it's streamlined and drives towards your growth and impact outcomes. All three of these steps realistically can be managed and have been chosen from some of our partners to be managed primarily in-house. What we're going to talk about today is both how that might look if you do it yourself, but also how it would look if we partnered with you to be able to provide acceleration on all three steps of that journey. Again, first step, let's get compliant. There's typically three different ways that organizations choose to go after compliance. The first one, far left, says traditional ATO consulting. Realistically, we have organizations who do and go after that without any consulting. You do it, you get in, you download the documents, you work on your accreditation paperwork, you check the boxes to ensure that you are secure and compliant. And you make adaptations to your architecture and the services you may be using to be able to come through and pass an effective compliance regime to be audited at the end through a third-party assessor. While that process can be done in-house, there's also the ability to leverage organizations like ourselves and many others to be able to help accelerate that through helping complete the documentation, guiding you through what good looks like, helping you avoid pitfalls and roadblocks along the way to being able to effectively adjudicate your authorization at the end and get your product into market. From what we're seeing, that common industry standard for that first model is about 18 to 24 months to get all the way through to an authorization. Second model, which if you're already running your services on the cloud or considering it, you're probably familiar some with that second model. Here you'll see I used AWS. That's just an example. This could be running on top of Azure or Google or Oracle as far as secure operations platform. But in this example with AWS, you're consuming managed services and managed controls from AWS as your hosting platform partner. As part of that, they extend their FedRAMP or DoD authorizations to you as a partner to remove some of the compliance controls. Like I mentioned at the beginning, they take care of shredding the hard drives and destroying memory and man traps and the things in the data center that honestly none of us want to take care of anymore as a service to us. And as part of our ATO, we're able to inherit those controls. In this middle model, we move that up the stack, whereas a already authorized managed services provider, call it a managed controls and compliance provider, you can consume additional controls like vulnerability mitigation, like security incident event management, like continuous reporting and monitoring to the government, and so forth, along with its ATO, its paperwork, its documentation and compliance, so that we can focus the authorization activities on your apps, your services, the things that you know best, tailoring the accreditation and security documentation just to the application where we want to make that impact, while the rest of the items are taken care of as a service. For those organizations who follow this path, we've seen them roughly be able to cut that timeline in half, maybe even a little bit more in getting towards an authorization, with a long pole in that tent being the time to authorization on the government side, which can be fairly lengthy. The third approach is relatively new in the market and something that we've been investing in with our partners that we refer to as ATO as a service. And you heard me refer to that earlier. ATO as a service maintains a lot of the similarities to the MSP supported, and that you inherit the controls and that we focus on compliance of your application. But instead of you needing to go and chase a sponsor for the service, you needing to go after the long drawn out process of getting your authorization. ATO as a service leverages our authorization, and in many cases, our sponsorships, so that you can accelerate your path to market through a streamlined, significant change process where you're still listed in the marketplace, but listed as a solution underneath that ATO as a service platform. This model we've seen organizations get through in well under 6 months, sometimes even faster, but in ways that you're allowed to be, you're still able to sell your solution fully authorized and be able to take it to market to those first customers who want that trust that your service is compliant and authorized. If at any point in the future it makes more sense for you to leverage your sponsor to become a primary listing in the FedRAMP marketplace, shifting from ATO as a service over to MSP supported is always an option. Happy to discuss that in more detail at a later date. The next question, which is critical about in your evaluation process for getting through the ATO, is deciding where to start. Right? And we find that for many organizations, FedRAMP Moderate makes a lot of sense if you're not clear on who your first customers are. FedRAMP Moderate is great because it not only does it provide your step into the federal space, but it also provides a lot of coverage for adjacent commercial controls. You no longer have to maintain a separate HIPAA compliant platform or a separate PCI compliant platform or CGIS for security services and others, as you're able to source and support many of those out of the similar control framework out of the FedRAMP Moderate platform. If, however, you know that your customers are looking for FedRAMP High or DoD IL4 or 5 or other compliance targets, let's start there. Making sure that you have a path to revenue is the first place to start. Now, if you start let's pick at FedRAMP High. If you start at FedRAMP High, what's important to realize is that quickly, once the word gets out that your solution is in market, you're going to have customers that will want you at other compliance levels. It's not uncommon for our partners who start at FedRAMP High to very quickly have Department of Defense engagements that require IL4 or IL5. So it's important to find a partner or find a process that easily translates from that singular control where you're currently authorized to a path forward in new control platforms, new control frameworks. Along the way you enable that is ensuring that the core services are, and the core definition of your application are documented in a way that that document can easily be upscaled. The services and an approach to you performing your operational capabilities and the management of your platform are designed and written in a way that can transition between compliance frameworks easily and with little impact to the way that you deploy and operate your systems. So what does that look like with SMX, right? Let's take that as an example here for how we've chosen to structure this to allow you to be able to scale regardless of where your ATOs take you. We found as a foundational principle to our support that we can't afford to be a partnership if we're forcing our partners into a model that we choose to operate our business. We have to create an open ATO process that can inherit any architecture, any application framework, your system in the way that you deploy it today, just uplifted in a way that can meet FedRAMP and or Department of Defense control expectations. And the way that's defined here is you'll see on the left-hand side, we have our intelligent automation platform. That's the IAP. The Elevate IAP is our SaaS service offering where our operators are able to operate at scale across a variety of authorization levels for our customers across a variety of ATOs, ISVs, and other services that we may be supporting, whether that be direct customer engagements and environments or ISV partnerships. That common platform allows us to be able to scale our 24/7 security and operations capabilities non-linearly with our customer engagements. Stepping over to the right, you'll see in that darker blue box that says Elevate Harness, that's where we deliver the controls that may be required for any ATO level. If an ATO level requires continuous monitoring services are deployed. If it requires vulnerability management is extended. That harness is designed to be able to meet the controls all the way up through IL5, and in some cases IL6, or scale down with you as controls and compliance don't maybe lighter down towards FedRAMP moderate, FedRAMP low, or IL2. The moderate colored blue box in the customer application environment, that is your application. We work hard to make sure that you don't have to fork your application to maintain a government compliant environment. While you may be able to remove operational and other security tools because those are being consumed as a service to your offering, we want to make sure that you're able to deploy to this environment as a new target architecture, as a new target ATO platform with the architecture that you maintain in as close to a reasonable compliance to your existing commercial side as you would on the federal side. This allows you to be able to ensure application capabilities that may be released can go to both sides as quickly as possible, that your teams don't have to worry about maintaining forked architectures between your government environment and your commercial. Now, I'm not promising that your entire architecture will be deemed as federal compliant. As we go through this process, we'll find areas that may need some adaptations to meet the expectations of the government, but those might be helpful as well to roll back into your commercial space to maintain that parity. All right, so let's assume now that we've navigated ATO compliance, that we've made it through the process and we've gotten our blessing to engage with the government as a secure capability. Second area is around staying in the government. And it's not a given. There's work to be done to make sure you stay there. So once you've received your ATO, what's next? I've gone into several conversations where there's the impression that once you get your ATO, the government trucks of money start driving up to your office and dumping money bags at your facility with orders uncharted. While that's awesome, and there likely is a path to that, just getting your ATO doesn't get there. It's not the final end state of your golden ticket. The reality is that we've got more to do together to live the government way in order to be able to gain the trust that the government needs to continue to expand together with you. About a year and a half ago, potentially about 2 years ago now, the GAO did an audit, as was completely appropriate, of the authorizations that were occurring under FedRAMP and other frameworks that the government was using. One of the things that they found were significant deficiencies on both the government and on the ISV side of maintaining the compliance that they had committed to within their authorizations. So the documentation would state that they were doing posture management or mitigating vulnerabilities and reporting that and ensuring that they were adjudicated in a timely fashion. And those activities, whether they were being done or not, weren't being communicated and weren't being validated. Because of this finding caused a pretty big rift in the space. GSA has been significantly restructuring the way that they've been evaluating and monitoring authorizations. Contracting shops on the government side, we've watched them get decimated and shifted into new positions, those who were responsible for those authorizations. And GSA is evaluating whether they even allow certain products that are on the marketplace to stay on the marketplace. Really, the impact here, though, is a trust impact. As organizations had expected, they couldn't trust the ATOs that were in the FedRAMP marketplace. They couldn't trust that they were being adjudicated and operated the way the paperwork was saying they would be. So to flip that, this gives us an opportunity to show that we can be trusted, that we can be doing what we are doing what the government is expecting. By following a rigorous continuous monitoring, often referred as CONMON, process, keeping a clear communications between us and our sponsors, now becomes an opportunity for us to not just have an ATO, but to maintain a reputation that our ATO is operated the way an ATO should be, that you can trust our package, maybe even differently, in advantage over other services that are in the market space. This is our opportunity to shine as a provider in meeting the government's expectations. Now there's a lot of work to be done, right? A bit because it's an opportunity to shine doesn't mean that it's easy. It also doesn't mean you have to do it on your own. The responsibility for that continuous monitoring lies between you and your government sponsor, the agencies that sponsored you. but you don't have to do it alone. As part of the SMX service, we have the ability to be a partner with you in that. Any of the controls that we are responsible for, we provide the continuous monitoring results. We also have the ability to maintain and support continuous monitoring for your platform and applications, part of a comprehensive ConMon service where we collaborate together to make sure the government's seeing the high value and high energy work that you're doing to secure services on their behalf and to deliver the kinds of innovation that the government is anxious for. The third area that sometimes goes overlooked in living the government way is professional services in the government can be different. What does that look like? Well, I think of the government as one of the largest small communities. I know groups where contracting officers from various agencies get together on the weekend and play game nights, talk about what's going well, talk about what's not going well, cross agencies, where technical teams spend time as they rotate through different agencies, lauding the successes and talking about the failures of solutions and consultancies that have supported them in the past. The word and hype cycle in the government is real and it's high. So expecting that we can deliver an ISV solution to the government and say, here, go deliver it, or make this successful on your own, can lead to some very negative outcomes that have significant impacts to our business. It's critical that as part of our growth planning, part of our path to the opening and making the government space big for us as a business, that we plan for this professional services path, that we have a way to ensure that we're able to bring the right level of compliant resources into our customer spaces, that we're able to have people who may need to touch government data to ensure that their applications, the services we're delivering, deliver on the outcomes that they're expecting, that those resources have the right level, that we have access to the resources with the right level of clearances to be able to help and ensure that the government gets the outcome that they've bought. And when they do, they keep on buying. And we'll talk about an example of that here in a minute. Ensuring that you have a path to this success is one of the most critical early steps that you can take in the business. Fortunately, again, we're here to help. SMX maintains a significant bench of cleared and near cleared resources to be able to work with you and your providers to ensure that your early customers and your late customers have a successful experience on your platforms. Okay, we've got our compliance, we've got our ATO. Now we're going to move into, now we've moved through living the government way. I think this is where it gets fun. This is probably why we're all here today, is to talk about this next step of what does it mean to grow in the government. So how do we take that story of expectations of getting your ATO and getting the money trucks to turn it into a reality where those trucks can come to us? The government has significant processes. The ways that they engage are structured to be able to funnel innovation, to be able to funnel funding, to be able to funnel outcomes to providers who make an impact. Realistically, there are ways to get those money trucks coming our ways if we follow through the government process. But it's significant. It takes a significant effort in the way that we look at growing. Sales efforts change to capture. Marketing becomes thought leadership. Getting positioned on an award contract is needed to close a deal. And all of this has a significant impact on when you receive your ATO. We get this, and it's a big change for most organizations. So finding partnerships who have the connections, contracts, and understanding of government GTM will be a key part of your success. So let's measure that. How do we make sure that we're having the impact we're looking for? Way back on slide 2, we talked about our mission statement of enabling that kind of innovation. In this case, that impact means growth, not just one client, not just 1 year, but sustained year over year. By planning this from the start and being diligent in execution, our experience is that significant growth is sustainable year over year. Partners on our platform, for example, are seeing 200% year over year growth with 2024 exceeding that expectation. That's because we planned for it from the beginning of the ATO. As I mentioned a minute ago, one of the key factors of getting revenue out of the government is having a contract vehicle. Government buyers buy differently than commercial organizations. Cracking the code on government procurement is critical to your ability to create an impact. The government buys through large pre-vetted contract vehicles like classic GSA Schedule 70s, now GSA Mass. Getting on those contracts significantly accelerates and is often required to close your deals. This is an area where we can help. SMX has invested years in building a war chest of high ceiling, high utilization contracts with over $7 billion in open ceilings. We love working with our partners to bring value to their solutions into our customers using these pre-vetted contract vehicles. And for our partners who are looking for more support in growing their government business, as part of the platform and offering, SMX is partnered with Carahsoft for full-service government market engagement. Carahsoft supports some of the transactional activities that go beyond having a contract in place, like marketing and webinars, like this one, in-person events and social media. SMX and Carahsoft collectively have access to hundreds of contract vehicles that might be right fit to your customers, the way that they buy or want to buy. Carahsoft also supports email and direct dial campaigns, generating lead lists, and engaging with SMX account managers on our contracts to get your solution in front of our customers. We also provide awards support for solutioning, scoping, proposals, orals, and government certified invoicing and payments. All built on the SMX compliant and accelerated managed services platform, where we have cleared and skilled resources to make sure your customers get the value out of your platform. So let's talk about a customer example here for a minute. How does this look in the real world? So, as I mentioned several years ago, we had a hypothesis with one of our partners, Appian. Appian was seeing significant success in the commercial space, providing software as a service for low-code, no-code deployments. They were also seeing some success in the federal government in deploying largely on-prem versions of their solution, where once the software was sold, they had little visibility to how it was being used and whether it was creating any value to the government. They also found it difficult to upsell and cross-sell and to use those references to grow their market at speed. SMX had no low-code solution. We had no capability of accelerating that kind of innovation in the government, but we had the ability to be able to meet controls and compliance and to provide fully managed environments that met the controls musters. And so together we hypothesized that if we brought our solutions into market, Appian running on SMX, that the government could innovate faster and that we could grow our joint markets at accelerated speeds. Appian's best-in-class solution was adopted at volume. And last year, they found that over half of their top customers were now running on their highly accredited GovCloud platforms. And AGC, Appian Government Cloud, became a market leader for them in their growth. Not only for new customer growth, but they found that their customers who adopted their platform averaged 110% renewals. That's 100%. Every single one of their customers renewed, and each one of them had minor to large amounts of growth, growing both inside their businesses and adjacent to other areas of the organization. You can watch the two-part YouTube AWS series on this at the Partnering Up for Success channel that we'll share after this video. So what if you want to de-risk and move fast? If you know you want a path to the government, if you're considering your ATO, do you want to start and create your roadmap before you go all in on moving fast to authorization? We're happy to join you there. The SMX Quick Start solution happens to be the first phase of any engagement that we would do, regardless of how fast you wanted to move and at how much trust and risk you tolerate. We're happy to pull that forward and offer it as a standalone engagement where we evaluate every step of that journey map, current state and current assessment, ensure that there aren't any major roadblocks to your authorization from day one. Create a future state design where your architecture can be deemed as compliant with a high level of assurance. Create your roadmap to government operations. So your day 2 engagement with the government is as strong as your day 400. And then create a government marketing plan. Know who your target customers are, understand their ATO requirements, and create your path appropriate to who's going to buy your first licenses. This 6-week engagement, and it primarily delivers your first path in the first 3 weeks, where after that first 3 weeks, you'll have a strong level of trust of what the program looks like, what your timeline is, and how you're going to run fast once the 6 weeks completes. Wrapping this up as a final point, we talked about history mattering. I think the next thing that really matters is finding a right partnership, making sure that you're aligned on the outcomes that matter to each other. As an ISV or as a solution provider, I'd largely gaining market share and gaining margin is critical to your business. For SMX, solutions at scale matter. The measurement that I gave earlier, the 200% growth, is how we're measuring ourselves. That tight alignment, your mission and ours, driving to higher levels of business and market growth, is what a real partnership should be founded on, and with that kind of clarity. So this means that our success is tied to your success, not just getting across the ATO line. That can't happen if we force our partners to adopt our way of doing business. We have to support your architecture, your app ecosystem, your deployment lifecycle, your CSP integrations, your deployment lifecycle, your CSP paths, and your customer requirements. And most definitely, your sales model, while we take care of compliance and contracts. As a pro tip, once your solution is ATO, the government will pay more for it. And in many cases, that's 30 to 50% more. Well, that's the presentation for today. Appreciate you spending the last 35-ish minutes with us. Hopefully there's a nugget in there that sparks your interest in being able to move fast to authorization. Obviously, everyone's at different points in your journey. If there's any place that we can help, whether it's within the defined structure of this program or just in consultative guidance, don't hesitate to ask. We're happy to be part of the solution.